Good day, Philippines.
Good day, Bukidnon.
I am Rowela Evangelio
and Ellouiza Lomboy, bringing you the hottest informations of mathematicians during 20th century. The 20th century continued the trend in the 19th towards increasing generalization and abstraction in mathematics, in which the notion of axioms as self-evident truths was largely discarded in favor of an emphasis on such logical concepts as consistency and completeness.
The headlines. British mathematician J.H. Hardy of Cambridge collaborated with mathematical genius Ramanuja of Madras, India.
German mathematician David Hilbert, product of the University of Göttingen, a great leader and respected mathematician.
Godel, the Herr Warum or the Mr. Why of Vienna.
The first to invent a machine, British mathematician Alan Turing.
Andre Well, an early leader of Bourbaki group and a very influential French mathematician.
An American mathematician, Paul Cohen, who won a lot of mathematical prizes.
Julia Robinson, first women president of American Mathematical Society, along with student Yuri Matthias.
British mathematicians Bertram Russell and Alfred Whitehead, and the book Principia.
British mathematician J.H. Hardy of Cambridge collaborated with mathematical genius Ramanuja of Madras, India. Angelica Segara stepped on the spot.
J.H. Hardy was an eccentric British mathematician known for his achievements in number theory and mathematical analysis. He graduated from the Cambridge University, created with reforming British mathematics, and claimed to have proved the Riemann hypothesis. He was also known for the adoption of an Indian mathematical genius, Srinivasa Ramanujan. Ramanujan is from Madras, India, who wrote to Hardy and Cambridge personas about the formula calculating the number of primes with no error. He is a self-taught and obsessed, leading him to prove Riemann's results, claiming that his ideas came to him in dreams. It is estimated that Ramanujan proved over 3,000 theories, identities and equations, composite numbers, functions, asymptotes, and theta functions. One of Hardy and Ramanujan representation of their collaboration was the tactic of numbers. Eventually, due to frustration, Ramanujan suffered from depression and illness, and even attempting suicide at one time. He died at the young age of 32 in 1920. On the other hand, Hardy lived 27 years after Ramanujan's death and died at the age of 70, also due to depression. Hence, Hardy was the only one who recognized the skills of Ramanujan and considered their collaboration as the romantic incident of his life. This is Angelica Segara reporting.
Thank you, Angelica. German mathematician David Hilbert will be brought to us by Angelica Monterola. Please bump in.
Thank you, Ellouiza. David Hilbert was a great leader and spokesperson for the discipline of mathematics in the early 20th century, but he was an extremely important and respected mathematician in its own right. He has many mathematical terms named after him, including Hilbert space, Hilbert curves, the Hilbert classification, and the Hilbert inequality, as well as several theorems, and he gradually established himself as the most famous mathematician of his time. He is busy enumeration of the 23 most important open mathematical questions at the 1900 Paris Conference of the International Congress of Mathematicians at the Sorbonne set the stage for almost the whole of 20th century mathematics. As early as 1899, he proposed a whole new formal set of geometrical axioms known as Hilbert axioms to substitute the traditional axioms of Euclid. Unlike Russell, Hilbert's formalism was premised in the idea that the ultimate base of mathematics lies not in logic itself, but in a simpler system of free logical symbols which can be collected together in strings or axioms and manipulated according to a set of rules of inference. By the time of his death in 1943, little remained of the great mathematics community at Göttingen, and Hilbert was buried in relative obscurity, his funeral attended by fewer than dozen people and hardly reported in the press. This is Angelica Monterola. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Juan. Now, let us lend our ears about Paul Cohen, an American mathematician.
Paul Joseph Cohen was an American mathematician. He was born on April 2, 1934, Long Branch, New Jersey, United States, and was died on March 23, 2007 in Stanford, California, United States. He is best known for his proofs that the continuum hypothesis and the axiom of choice are independent from Zermelo Feinkel set theory, and he was awarded the Field Medals in 1966 for his proof of the independence of the continuum hypothesis. Joemary Esoy reporting.
Thank you, Joemary. Now let's talk about the Mr. Y of Vienna. Uzziah Pagaray, please stand your spot.
Thank you, Ellouiza. One of the 20th century mathematicians is Kurt Godel. Kurt Godel grew up a rather strange, sickly child in Vienna. From an early age, his parents called him as Herr Warum or Mr. Y for his unstable curiosity. At University of Vienna, Godel first studied number theory, but soon turned his attention to mathematical logic, which was consumed him for most of his rest of his life. As a young man, he was like Herbert, optimistic and convinced that mathematics could be made whole again and would recover from uncertainties introduced by work of Cantor and Riemann. He also part of Vienna Circle. His first achievement was in his incompleteness theory, which showed that all valid statements in Frege's first-order logic can be proved from a set of simple axioms. Godel's incompleteness theorem of 1931 showed that within any logic system for mathematics there will be some statements about numbers which are true but which can never be proved. This was enough to prompt John von Neumann to comment that it's all over. Incompleteness theorem, surely a mathematician's worst nightmare, lead to something of a crisis in mathematics community, raising the specter of problem which may turn out to be true but it's still unprovable. Something which had not been even considered in whole to millennia plus history of mathematics. That would be all. This is Uzziah Pagaray reporting.
Proceeding to the other mathematician, Alan Turing. Alan Turing showed early signs of the genius which was to become more prominent later, solving advanced problems as a teenager without having even studied elementary calculus, and immersing himself in the complex mathematics of Albert Einstein. He became a confirmed atheist after the death of his close friend and fellow Cambridge student Christopher Morcombe.
Thank you, Rowela, an early group leader of Bourbaki and an influential French mathematician, and their will be brought to us by Joemary Esoy.
Andrew Will was born on May 6, 1906 in Paris, France, and died on August 6, 1998 in Princeton, New Jersey, United States. Will was an influential French mathematician in 20th century, known for his foundational work in number theory and algebraic geometry. He was the founding member and the de facto early leader of the mathematical Bourbaki group. He was also a gifted linguist who read Sanskrit and many other languages, and was a sympathetic expert on Indian religious writings. He was a child prodigy and was drawn towards mathematics at a very young age. Joemary Esoy reporting.
Thank you, Joemary. Another 20th century mathematicians, Julia Robinson and Matthias. Julia Robinson was one of the very few women to have made a serious impact on mathematics, and she became the first woman to be elected as president of the American Mathematical Society. Her particular passion was Hilbert's 10th problem, and she applied herself to it obsessively. What became known as the Robinson hypothesis, which suggested that in order to show that no such method existed, that all needed was to construct one equation whose solution was a very specific set of numbers, one which grew exponentially. On the other hand, Matthias had already distinguished himself as a mathematical prodigy and won numerous prizes in mathematics. He turned to Hilbert's 10th problem as the subject of his doctoral thesis at Leningrad State University and began to correspond with Robinson about her progress and to search for a way forward. Matthias and his colleague Boris Tinchkin also developed an interesting visual sieve for prime numbers which effectively crosses out all the composite numbers, leaving only the primes. He has a theorem on recursively enumerable sets named after him, as well as polynomial related to the colorings of triangulation of sphere.
Thank you, Ellouiza. Last but not the least are the collaboration between British mathematician Bertrand Russell and Alfred North Whitehead and their book Principia. Angelica Segara, your turn.
Bertrand Russell and Alfred North Whitehead were both British mathematicians who made important contributions in the fields of mathematical logic and set theory. Whitehead was the tutor of Russell while studying mathematics at Trinity College, Cambridge in the 1890s. They later collaborated in the first decade of 20th century through their famous book of Principia Mathematica, which contains most of Russell's works, while Whitehead was the co-writer. They spent 10 years on working the said book. This contains Russell's paradox, theorems, and other mathematical concepts. This book was published in 3 volumes in 1910, 1912, and the year 1913 separately due to their own lack of expenses. This publication leads the two mathematicians' fame and received multiple prizes. Did you know that upon working on this book, Russell and his wife Alice moved with the Whiteheads, where his own marriage suffered at the time when Russell became infatuated with Whitehead's young wife? This is Angelica Segara reporting.
And those are the mathematicians during 20th century. This is Ellouiza Lomboy, your news anchor.
While Evangelio, saying, Kids Future Mathematicians.